Hi everyone, this is Sean. Welcome back to my channel. So I just finished coming down the hill from San Diego. I've been on the road for about an hour and 15, maybe an hour, 10 minutes. And this is where I stretch. This is where I take a small break before I head back to my town. If you see me looking around a little bit, that's because this area is kind of dangerous. But for some reason, it's peaceful and it's dangerous at the same time. So that's my car over there. That's the 8 freeway. We're at Myers Creek. I'm saying that just in case they find me a goner in the desert here. And all they have to work on is my cell phone. Anyhow, so here, this is a dried up creek bed, an ancient dried up creek bed. You could see some trail over there, maybe from an ATV. That's probably not Border Patrol. I'm actually about maybe 3 miles, maybe a little bit more south. So over this hill here is Mexico. And in the middle of the night, this is where the smugglers go wild over here, guys. High smuggling route. Make sure you don't come out here at night by yourself, especially. Just a beautiful place to record. Beautiful and a little bit dangerous. Okay, I'm back. I'm actually back in my car. Something told me just to get back in my car. So that's what I'm doing right now. Normally I'll record to the end, but I need to follow my instincts. And plus, guys, ammunition's getting expensive. It's $2 a round for your premium defensive rounds. So let's not even go out there and record. Let's record in this car here. So we're going to talk about gangs, specifically how to address them if you are working private security at an apartment complex, a housing development, condos, the projects. Is there a way that you can deal with the situation in the most safe and efficient manner possible? I have experience, guys, working in these types of environments. Most of my experience is in a law enforcement capacity. I am so sorry, guys, for the third interruption. While I was filming, this construction pulled up alongside of me and suggested that I keep moving, that I leave, because they were going to close the whole highway down. If they closed that highway down, I was just going to be screwed. So I'm lucky that I walked up back to where my car was at and left. I mean, I would have really been screwed. So that instinct that I have, that sixth sense that I have, it had nothing to do with physical danger. For some reason, my sixth sense was kind of sort of telling me to leave that area because of construction. I mean, at the time, I didn't know it was construction. Anyhow, you guys know what I'm getting at. Listen to your sixth sense. So like I was saying, or what I was about to say was this. I work for a law enforcement agency. I'm not going to say what agency, but I work for them. And I was a watch commander at that point in time, and I was in charge of 7 men. And there was a particular street where all the residences were scared. The residents were scared because there was so much gang activity. You have 2 houses on this small, tiny drive, and they would accommodate drug sales, gun sales, illegal gun sales, graffiti. There'd be fights. There'd be juveniles just running amok there, speeding cars. It just really deteriorated the quality of life. So what I end up doing, and this is going to be relevant, you guys, to security, don't worry. What I had my men do is every time we got dressed and we're ready to go to work, we wouldn't do any briefing at the police station. I would have my men line up right in front of the house where all these problems were happening. All 7 of us just stacked up deep. We had our parking lights on. People would come out of their house. The dirtbags would come out of their house. They'd close the door because a lot of them had open warrants. But they were scared. They thought that there was going to be a search warrant being served or some type of raid or operation every single time that we worked. We would do roll call. We would do training bulletins. We would have discussions on what we're going to do tonight or tomorrow. So for 30 minutes, we were parked there. And we'd also have our lunch or breakfast, dinner, whatever you want to call it. We throw it right on our hood and eat right in front of them. We snack in front of them. We joke in front of them. We do our briefings right in front of them. If we have to take a piss, scratch that. I was referring to if you have to take a piss, don't go on their lawn or on a tree next to them, but instead piss them off. Okay, joke's over. Let's move on with the topic, guys. Be professional. Anyhow, this worked, guys. So there was a certain number of days of the week where these guys just stayed in their house because they knew every time at 10:30 and other random hours we would just be parked there deep. I'm telling you, we had our lunch there, our briefings there. We would just park there, and they would feel uncomfortable. So this does translate to private security, and I'll show you how. This has all to do with command of presence. Now, you're not going to have the same perception of authority as police officers, but you can still do this if you have a patrol fleet. If you have 5 or 7 officers, this is not a bad idea. It's not a bad strategy. Obviously, it could go south. I mean, they can shoot at you. They can roll insults at you. They can even challenge you to fight. But look, 5 or 7 or maybe 15. I worked at a security company in Orange County where we had like 12 cars. Okay? You want your gang of 7 people to take on us 10 or 12 that are out there, that are operating with legitimacy? Choose your battles. Choose your battles, guys. Okay. So let's talk about my strategy. And if I didn't mention this already, guys, the camera is bouncing all over the place. I'm on the road. I have nothing to show you on camera. So there's a 6-step approach to this, to addressing gang activity, and it works at apartment complexes. Most security companies, they don't have the resources to do this. Well, they don't have the money, but let's talk about it. These are the 6 items or resources that you need. Number 1, you need the cooperation of management or the ownership of the housing development. Number 2, excuse me, you need an attorney. Number 3, you need a private investigator. Now, this is specific to California. 4th, you need a gang unit. And I'm talking about a gang unit of private security officers. We'll discuss this a little bit more. 5th, you need a lot of money. 6, you need cooperation from law enforcement. The 6th item isn't really a requirement, but it's going to help a lot. So let's talk about number 1. Okay, management ownership. You have to have buy-in from management on your operation. If you don't have any buy-in, then you don't have any authority, agent authority to work on. You're not going to get anywhere. So when I worked in Orange County, I worked for one of the largest security companies out there at that point in time. We had an enormous, just a huge patrol fleet. And I worked at a housing development. It is actually an HOA, Homeowners Association. It was known on the radio as Delta 22. And Delta 22 just had so much problems with all of the gang activity I was talking to you guys about. And you would think because it's an HOA, we would have a lot more authority, or the HOA board would have a lot more authority. But it didn't work that way, guys. We had a weak HOA management, and I would get into it with a lot of these gang members, these troublemakers. I would have the backing from my security company leadership, but there was no backing from the HOA management, guys. If you don't have the backing from HOA management, you don't have any solid ground to stand on. You're standing on the water, guys. You're floating on a river. That's what you're doing. Number 2, you're going to need an attorney, at least retain one, because you are kind of sort of threading on fair housing and discrimination laws in your state. Whenever you conduct this type of enforcement activity, you could be threading on the issue. It's not even worth it, guys. When they sue the management company or the HOA or the manager, whatever company's managing the housing project, they are bound to include you in the lawsuit. And I know that you're an independent contractor, but they'll try their best, and sometimes they're actually successful with including you on the lawsuit. Sometimes your insurance companies, if you work for a security company that has insurance, they just pay out because it's just not worth the fight, and they don't believe that they're going to win the argument that you're an independent contractor. Come on, guys, let me merge lanes here. There's going to be a lot of illegal issues. Whatever you're doing out there, you need to clarify with an attorney. There could be some legal issues as it pertains to screening of tenants. Okay, if you're engaged in screening of tenants, then I believe that the Fair Credit and Reporting laws in that jurisdiction, they might maybe apply to you. That's the approach that I would take. Third, private investigator. In California, when you conduct an investigation that's not incident to embezzlement, theft, or loss of loss of the client's resources, you need a private investigator license. You're going to need to do a lot of recon missions, surveillance. There's going to be a lot of surveillance that you're going to have to do. You're going to have to see who is going inside of what unit and compare them to the leasing agreement. And that's assuming that this is an apartment complex, it's not an HOA. Remember, there's some HOAs where they actually rent out their apartment to somebody else. So you kind of have weak ground to work on in that circumstance, because there's not a direct contact between that owner of that individual unit and you as a security company. But you're going to need to do a lot of recon activity, surveillance activity, just to see who's going on who. Just to see who is going where. Are they a guest? Are they a resident that is not even on the lease? It helps more with just the apartment complexes. You are going to need a gang unit of the toughest officers that you have, that are able to function, able to work in a gang environment. I have a lot of respect for a gentleman. I think his last name was Gamble, and I think his first name maybe George. And on or about 1999, I had a discussion with him. I wanted to work at a housing development in Compton, California. We had an excellent conversation. He asked me where I was from, where I grew up at. And what ended up happening was, months ago, they shut up the guard shack. So what I like about Mr. Gamble is he was looking out for my safety. And I never lived in a gang environment. I mean, I've been hit up by gang members growing up where I grew up, but I wasn't involved in the gang culture. So he highly suggested, he was willing to hire me, guys. He highly suggested that I don't work for him. He was impressed with my qualifications, but that was a suggestion, and I took his advice. If you guys know Mr. Gamble from the Compton area, I'll send this video to him. I respect him to this day. I think last he was working the Coachella Fest. I think he had some projects over there in Riverside County of California. Okay, money. Okay, you're going to need to have an insurance policy, a commercial liability insurance policy that is going to be able to cover the Section 8 project areas or high risk areas, guys. Your chances of being sued they're decent. I mean, you're going to be doing a lot more enforcement activity, and that might draw up lawsuits. You're going to need money for paying your employees. You can't pay the minimum wage. I mean, they're risking their life for the most part working in this type of environment. And it's my suggestion that during the initial start of this investigation, I think just to show a hard command of presence, ideally you want 4 people on the site, 4 security officers, the toughest security officers you have, the smartest security officers you have, the best trained, and also the ones that have the most restraint. We want those 4 officers. I don't want to have one officer on this project. It's going to be too dangerous. You might get retaliation. Okay. I recommend hiring former correctional officers maybe law enforcement officers, former military. These guys probably have more training than your standard or average private security officer. And I say that with quotation marks because not every single not every private security officer has more training in firearms, in defensive tactics than the majority of correctional officers and law enforcement officers. This does not pertain to every single person, but just in general terms. Last but not least, you're going to need cooperation with law enforcement. I highly recommend that you have a meeting with the chief or the sheriff, the highest ranking member of the law enforcement division, where you intend to conduct these operations, and just get a gentleman's agreement or maybe something in writing. Yeah, you probably won't get something in writing, but at least a gentleman or gentlewoman's agreement, and just ask, hey, if I take these people into custody for trespassing, will you honor the arrest? Will you be able to book these people into county jail? Ask and get agreement. Will you respond if we call you? Now, if you can answer of no, we're not going to do this, you're not law enforcement, you guys are taking on a risk, we want nothing to do with this, you are going to get a lot of law enforcement executives that are going to tell you this. If that's the case, well, that's fine. We'll just go to the city council, the township meetings, and describe the level of concern for this housing project, how you actually have a solution to it, and describe the solution. You might only have a minute, guys, or 3 minutes or 5 minutes, but describe what your plan was. Describe that you have zero cooperation, especially coming from whatever commander or chief it is, and you are just requesting that law enforcement conduct their own investigation of this complex, and they divert their own resources, because you're willing to use your resources or the resources from management or the owner of the complex. You're willing to do that, but they're preventing you from doing that. You're going to have to put them on blast, you guys. That's one of the ways that you will get cooperation. Now, that's not the way I like to operate, but that's one of several ways. And what you're going to have to start to do is really enforce trespassing, guys. If you see during your surveillance breaches of the agreement, of the leasing agreement, that needs to be enforced. That tenant needs to be removed from that complex as soon as possible and as fairly as possible. And that's how you do it, guys. I've worked with apartment complexes where I provided them intel on who's living where and what type of criminal activity they are engaged in, including police reports. And what do you know? They get removed very, very fast. Problem's gone. Actually, guys, for one of these apartment complexes that I'm talking about, there is rarely any problem at all. The gangs are completely gone. Maybe there's a couple, but they keep breaching the tenant agreement, landlord agreement, they're out. And that's what you have to enforce, guys. I want you out there enforcing all the parking rules. If you want to park there, that's cool, but you need a parking pass. That needs to be enforced. No parking pass, vehicle towed, obviously depending on what the agreement says. That way you don't have vehicles conducting drug sales, throwing their stuff in the trunk and going on and off the property. If you get rid of the drug sales, the drug activity, you're going to probably get rid of the gang activity as well. Some of you watching this video want to just start yelling right now. And I get it. I get the frustration. You're probably thinking, Sean, this is not going to work. And I'm going to argue this will work if you follow all 6 steps. I've done great in the past, getting rid of gangs, getting rid of the criminal element from these apartment complexes. And I've done so with a lot less resources than I describe here. But this can be done, but all 6 elements need to be accomplished. Most of you watching this cannot get this accomplished because of the money reasons. That's what it amounts to. I mean, you have a low-income apartment complex or Section 8 housing. management most likely is not going to allocate all this money towards security. I'm going to argue that there is money available. It's just a matter of grabbing money from some resources and sticking them to the needs of the people, to the needs of the people in the apartment complex. There's always money somewhere. You may have to dig for it, but there's always money somewhere for these types of activities. I can't tell you guys how many times that I've arrested somebody who's an apartment manager for embezzlement. It just happens too often. There's money. I know for some low-income housing developments, there are grants that you can apply for. Now, when I say you, I'm referring to the management of the company. It's just a matter of finding those grant writers, writing up the perfect grant that will get you, that will be able for you, when I mean you, I mean the apartment complex management, to hire security. You have to have a plan in place though. If you follow the six-step plan, this might give you that leverage to get the grant, because grants are competitive, guys. They're very competitive. I've done some grants before, and they take a long time. I don't think I want to do anymore. I'm actually working on one. But there's grant writers that you can hire, and unfortunately, you can't be the one to do it. If you're a security company, you have to direct management in the right direction. I know that a lot of people watching this video are going to argue that private security can't do nothing. You're just security. And I'm going to disagree. As a private security officer, you can make a private person's arrest. And yes, I get it. Anybody else can make a private person's arrest. But that is the greatest weapon at your disposal, the ability to make a private person's arrest. Now, what happens after the private person's arrest? Well, you transfer custody to a law enforcement officer, and that is why you need full cooperation. That's why you need to meet with the chief of police, the sheriff, and ask if they are going to honor your arrest for trespassing. And will this person be booked into county jail? If you have an agency that is willing to do that, a law enforcement agency that's willing to partner with you, then you are going to be a lot more effective. You're going to be arresting gang members who are trespassing, criminal elements who are trespassing, and those who are evicted. Remember, if there is a properly served eviction, okay, and the sheriffs, depending on what state you're in or county, if they've already served that notice, and a lot of times if they've removed that person from the premises, if they're back on property, you give them a trespass. They don't leave, then you place them under private person's arrest, and you expect law enforcement to honor that arrest. If you can't get law enforcement to honor those arrests, then you can't use this plan that I'm talking about. The 6-step plan, it does not work. You need the cooperation. And for that reason, there are very few security companies out there that are able to accomplish this. They just don't have the resources, they don't have the money, they don't have the cooperation from the client. But there's one company out there that lives in a good area, not lives, but works in a decent area, or an area that is willing to listen to them. The law enforcement, the politicians, that are able to listen to this security company. And it will work. So guys, if you like this video, I can elaborate on any issues you want me to elaborate on. If this is something that you're able to do, you're able to match or meet all 6 points that I discussed, feel free to get a hold of me. I won't manage your project, but I'll just give some feedback about it. We'll call it feedback. Again, I'm not in a role to provide professional consulting with you, but I want to just open up some dialogue, you guys. But please don't if you can't accomplish all 6, do not contact me. And I don't say that as a level of arrogance. I'm just saying that because I have so much emails coming in, text messages, phone calls, comments of the videos, that I can only work with somebody. I don't want to say the word work. I can only communicate with somebody who's able to accomplish all 6. Okay, guys, take care. Looking forward to dialogue.